All right. Welcome, everyone. Hello, and happy Recovery Month. September is our month. And my name is Max, and I am your community manager here at Workit Health. Welcome to Brandon Novak, Rising from Rock Bottom, presented by Workit Health. Workit Health offers an alternative to rehab done totally through the Workit app. So all virtual, very convenient. At Workit Health, you receive addiction care that works, including medication, support groups, and coaching, all from the privacy of your home. All you need to get started is an internet connection, an ID, a phone, tablet, or computer. And best of all, we accept most major insurance plans. So if you aren't already a member of this amazing Workit Health community, please visit our website at www.workithealth.com to learn more about our incredible program. We are saving lives out here, y'all, as is the man of the hour, Mr. Brandon Novak, our special guest this evening. To prepare you for this talk tonight, we have a video that will give you a little bit of background on his life, his career, and the raw reality of the rock bottom this man has risen from. So this video is 7 minutes long, and it does show some tough footage. So at any time, if you feel like you need to take a minute, mute the video. You can even hop out and hop back in after about 7 minutes, and you'll be immediately let back in. But let's learn a little bit about the man, the myth, the legend.
This is how you see how real my life was. This is what heroin ends up having you look like in the long run, and the shit you have to go through. This is just another reminder why I don't want to shoot dope anymore.
What's that, a school picture?
Yeah, with his American flag. You know, he's a cute kid with a normal childhood. You can see that.
Skateboarding, I lived it, I slept it, I breathed it, I dreamed it. From the day that I got my first skateboard to the day I put the first needle in my arm.
When he was like 10 years old, he was at Tony Hawk's house in California for the summer. Multiple times he'd go there.
Brandon Novak, he had made it to the sort of the top of his game. Whenever you saw Brandon, you're like, whoa! That's really unbelievable for a kid to do that kind of thing.
The drugs came into play. It was such a gradual and slow process.
I found bongs and the roach clips, the little pink bags and the pills.
I definitely knew that he was having problems. He got into the really heavy stuff.
And my life was slowly going downhill. My priorities, my interests faded away. It's something I worked so hard for since probably 6 years old. I said I'm done, and I quit. It was just so easy just to get high. I quit caring, I quit having hope in anything.
That was really the saddest part about Brandon's life. Had he maintained his skating, he could have really made a career out of it.
I have no more responsibilities, so I decided I needed to go out and celebrate. I was so sick, man. I celebrated by quitting my dream.
Sometimes when I would be in bed at nights, I would hear him in the bathroom vomiting. That's how I knew he was into the drugs.
I wake up in the morning, the first thought is heroin.
The kid was tearing my heart out of my body, and I couldn't do anything about it.
My top priority was the cash for the dope.
I've taken him to meetings, to counselors. I bailed him out of jail from Colorado to Texas to New York. No sooner than we were home, he'd be right out on the front street making another drug deal.
She would tell me over and over, like, you're killing me. And I was so selfish.
I was literally going through hell. And I said, God, I'm asking you one thing. Cure him or kill me, because none of us can live like this anymore. The drug dealers were calling and threatening my life. They were going to kill me because he was a drug and he owed them money. They were appearing at my house at night with guns after me. He said, are you Novak's mother? And I said, yes. He said, we want the money. I had to leave him and go somewhere where I would never let him invade my life again. He disappeared off the face of the earth. He was living on the streets. That's how bad it got.
I have nowhere to go, nothing to my name. I knew how bad I was, but the only thing that mattered was getting another fix. And once I got a fix, everything was better again, as it's sick.
I think he's on heroin, like Seriously, I mean, he's like really skinny and he looks like shit. I decided to take Novak in and try to help him out. I'd give him cameos on Viva La Bam because he had no problem just doing stupid shit. Novak, you in?
Wouldn't have any other way.
I've been shooting heroin to forget about all my problems. So not only am I overcoming the biggest fight of it all, which is quitting heroin, then I have to deal with all the problems that I've been avoiding and putting off by getting high for 6 years.
I felt like I was putting my family in danger and ourselves at risk. How do I know that his drug addict friends aren't going to come here? How do I know that he's not going to pay somebody and they're coming looking for him here? As much as my heart wanted to say that he was doing better, I knew he wasn't.
He's sitting there lying straight to my goddamn face, like I'm this idiot.
What kind of drugs you on you now? Nothing. Nothing at all.
I hate to be negative because I'd like to believe him because he's my friend and I want to believe him.
I don't want to have to back you down, Brandon.
It seriously stressed me out, and just thinking about it stressing me out right now because it's upsetting because he's a awesome dude.
The first time I met Novak was when we were filming the second Jackass movie.
Give me a 10!
He was nuts right away. You can say that about Brandon Novak. He makes an impression on you.
Yo, Novak.
Oh my God! He was a f***ed up, crazy drug addict who did gnarly stunts. I mean, he fit right in.
There were some problems.
It didn't take long to figure out that Brandon had a problem with drugs and alcohol. He was just always doing drugs, looking for drugs, and then more drugs after that. Brandon had this book called Dream Seller, and it was an addiction memoir. I had to put it down. It was so frustrating for me. Because here's this book about a guy who knows so much about addiction, and he's just unwilling to do anything about it.
My days are kind of somewhat numbered, man. I have hepatitis C, right? And I drink every day like it's going out of style. And it's not fair, man. Not fair to my mother.
I just did a year in prison. Let me hear some noise!
Stay the off drugs, kids, man, because I up so bad. I'm just so sick of lying, and I'm so sick of trying to figure out who I can tell the truth to and who I can't.
This drug called heroin. Now ask yourself, is it fun? Or does it look real pleasurable and pretty?
I went and bought 2 cemetery plots. One for me and one for Brandon. I just pray, I tell him, Brandon, please, I'm not gonna get any younger. Please straighten your life out.
Y'all, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Brandon Novak.
Statistics state, theoretical evidence dictates that I am to be high or dead right now. And the fact that I'm not is, it's A, miraculous, equaling a miracle, and B, it defies logic. May 25th, 2015, I had found myself in a position where the God of my understanding showed up and created just a big enough gap between me and the last bag of heroin that I injected into my arm. Just long enough to allow me to have a moment of clarity to see what my life really looked like was. And for the first time in my life, I was no longer accepting of the outcome that I, Brandon Novak, continuously created for myself. And what that looked like was this: May 25th, 2015. I found myself walking into my 13th inpatient treatment center. May 24th, 2015, I had come to after being on life support for 7 days. I had lost count of outpatients and detoxes. My mother had bought me a plot. People had begun to take life insurance policies out on me. I had been medevaced to 4 different hospitals in 4 different states from 4 different overdoses. My mother, God bless her, had sold 3 homes to financially pay for me to go to 2 different treatment centers. In the beginning of my alcoholism, in the beginning of my addiction, my mother used to get on her knees and pray to God, please, God, do not let tonight be the night that I receive that phone call that my son has finally succumbed to his addiction and he's no longer with us. Please do not let tonight be that night, God. To at the end, my mother getting on her very same knees, praying to the very same God, please, God, let tonight be the night that I finally receive that phone call that my son has succumbed to his addiction and he's no longer with us, because then at least I can know he's safe and sound once and for all. I'm a 38-year-old homeless heroin addict who resides on the corner of Eastern Avenue and Patterson Park, prostituting my body in hopes to secure enough finances to acquire another bag of heroin. I want to kill myself on a daily basis. I just don't want to hurt myself in the process. I'm terrible at suicide because I keep waking up. May 25th, 2015, I'm so low, the curb looks like a skyscraper. And the saddest part about everything that I just shared with you is that I don't understand how I got here. How did I get here? The reality is I got here because the disease of addiction does not discriminate. From Yale or jail, the White House or the outhouse, the results are all the same. 1 out of 3 people will be affected directly or indirectly. Today in the nation, 178 people will die as a direct result of an opioid overdose. That's just opioids. But how did I get here? I had goals, I had dreams, I had aspirations, I had ambitions. I was going to be somebody. And you're going to hear in the story that I share with you, I actually did some things in life that people would accredit to success, happiness, potentially even dream of doing. What I'm going to share with you tonight is my story about my life. It's my testimony and my sobriety. I'm not going to pretend to understand or know what brought you to this chat to listen to my talk. That's not fair to you or me. I'm going to share with you my story. Everything that I share with you tonight is not things that I knew in my earlier attempts at getting or staying sober. What I've learned to be true today is that my life is all in retrospect, live forward and learn backwards. And today, after having remained sober for over 7 years, it's very easy for me to look back and recognize the synchronicity in life's events that have led me to the right here, right now, tonight with you, beautiful ladies and gentlemen, that proved to me a God of my understanding is so real and has been doing for me so much more, so much bigger, so much broader than I could ever conceive. My mother's a nuclear physicist on the board of Mercy Hospital. Recently retired after 53 years of gainful employment, second longest employer in Mercy Hospital history. Come from a good family. My brother's an attorney in the White House who practices pensions and benefits. My father dies as a direct result of the disease of addiction. Never held a job a day in his life. Taught me one thing: if and when I go to prison, how to conduct myself. Somewhere along the lines, he acquired the liking of crack cocaine, continued to smoke that, body shut down. He's no longer with us. Right? So if you would have asked me 30, 60, 90, 6 months, 9 months into my sobriety, what my home life looked like, I would have told you it was the most debilitating thing a child could ever experience, and no one deserves to have the upbringing that I did. That's not the case. See, because in my sobriety, I've learned to take responsibility for my actions and be accountable and show up for my part of the deal. And the reality is, I came from a very loving home with a family that did the best that they could with what they had. There's no longer me justifying, deflecting, or minimizing the disease of my addiction that I've been diagnosed with, and accept, trying to put it on my father or trying to blame it on my mother, that if my mother never continuously let my father back in the house, then I wouldn't have turned out the way that I did. If my father didn't sell drugs to me or with me or for me, then I would have never ended up the way I did, right? Like, it was always someone else's fault, wrong person, wrong place, wrong time. And what I know to be true today is my father was a very beautiful man with a very sick disease and was not well. And I recognized the power of alcoholism from a very young age, because my father, God rest his soul, was the nicest guy in the world. Everybody in the room loved Jerome, but when Jerome didn't show up to make dinner at 5:30, and we heard him and his biker buddies pulling the driveway at 3:30, and the key hit the lock, we shook like a leaf, because we had no idea who was walking through that door. But we did know that whoever came through that door was not going to be a good man. And that was generally not in my father's makeup, his behavior, but alcoholism and or addiction, produces this delusional narrative that when we're sick and we're suffering and we're untreated, it makes sense to us and it makes us believe the unbelievable. And so from a very young age, I recognized what alcohol or drugs did to an individual upon ingestion. And I actually made it a point to prove to my mother, my brother, and my sister why I would never become that man. I am going to excel at everything that I do, because no one deserves to be treated the way we were treated because of my father's untreated alcoholism and addiction. Me, on the other hand, I received my first skateboard at the ripe young age of 7 years old. And that night when my mother put me to bed, she said, "Brandon, what would you like me to do with the skateboard?" And I said, I want it in bed with me. And she said, "Why?" And I said, "Because if I die, I want it to go with me." Right? The moment that board touched my hand, I knew I was going to be a professional skateboarder. There was no reason for a plan B, a trait, or an option. And to back up a little bit, anybody that's in this chat that suffers with alcoholism and or addiction, I don't believe that any of us got here because we took the short bus to school. Quite the contrary, actually. I believe we get here because we're too smart for our own goddamn good. But I also know to be true that sobriety is the only thing that works so well that we stop doing it. And I generally tend to stop doing it in the past by going to a 12-step meeting, sitting in those seats, listening to what you guys are telling me, and without fail, believing the delusional narrative that this alcoholic brain that I possess cooks up in my mind. I outthink myself out of this seat every goddamn time. Because when I put my hand up and I qualify as, "My name is Brandon and I'm an alcoholic," all that simply means is that I'm defiant by nature. I hate authority and I refuse to conform. See, because I possess this job that places me in a lot of positions I don't like to be in, and it allows me to feel a lot of feelings I don't like to feel, and that job consists of knowing everything. So thank you, Workit, for kindly suggesting to me what I could potentially do to save my life, but I'm going to kindly suggest why you should fuck off. Because I know. And the scariest thing about that is my resume does state that I know some things that I'll get into in a little bit with you. But my stark reality looked like May 25th, 2015, walking into my 13th inpatient treatment center. Just came to from being on life support for 7 days. Medevaced 4 different hospitals in 4 different states for 4 different overdoses. Reside on the corner of Eastern Avenue and Patterson Park in Baltimore City, prostituting my body just to secure enough finances to acquire another bag of heroin. Mother getting on her knees, praying to God, please cure him or kill him because we can no longer take it anymore. Walking into my 13th facility with 8 scarves, 2 jackets, 3 socks, stick of deodorant, all fits into a bag that doubles as my pillow, a needle, a spoon, and a restraining order. I come to the grand realization that you know what I know is that I don't know. And my very best thinking has placed me here yet again, right? Again, coming back to the beginning of my talk, I found myself in a position that I was no longer accepting of. And after having tried to get sober for so many times, so many attempts through so many years, it was so easy for me to look and recognize that the common denominator in my problems were me. And I had simply just been rearranging the furniture on the Titanic for so many years, but without fail, my ship sank every time. And maybe if I got out of my way and like reached out to Workit and said like, I can't do this, but you guys clearly can because you're like the furniture. Every time I come, you're here. Can you help me? And unbeknownst to me, my pain turned into my purpose and it allowed this delusional alcoholic brain to become open-minded and willing just long enough to put my hand out and reach for help. Again, the moment that board touched my skateboard, I knew I was going to be a professional skateboarder. There was no reason for a plan B, a trait, or an option. I am the kind of alcoholic, if I believe it, I can see it, not the other way around. I eat it, I breathe it, I sleep it. At 14, I'm the first skateboarder ever in the world to be endorsed by Gatorade. They're flying me to Chicago to the Quaker Oats building where they make Gatorade at the time. They're putting me on a treadmill and they put Michael Jordan on the treadmill directly next to me. They strap these EKGs to our chest and they give us each Gatorade to see the effects that it has on different sports players. At the age of 15, I'm touring the world with Pal Peralta. I'm designing my pro model for Pal. I'm hanging out with Tony Hawk and I'm living a life beyond my wildest dreams. Everything I had ever prayed, dreamed, or hoped for at that young age had happened. If I were to have died at that age, I would have been the happiest child that ever walked the earth because I received everything that I wanted, plus some. But remember, I told you I'm going to tell you my story. I can't tell you your story. And what my story looks like is, I don't remember the first time I partook in a drink or a drug. I don't remember the first time I sniffed that line. I ate that pill. I hit that joint. I smoked that pipe. I remember the first time I shot that bag, but the rest I don't remember. See, because my story isn't one of like, I found the drug, I took the drug, had the aha moment, the reason that like I believe was worth living for every day and finally could breathe a sense of calm and ease. That's not my story. I don't even recall the first time I partook. Remember, I told you I had goals, I had dreams, I had aspirations, I had ambitions and motivation. I was going to be somebody. Most importantly, I was going to prove a point why I would never become my father. But what I can tell you about, sure as the day is long, like I hold this pen in my hand, the first time that someone attempted to stand between me and my drug. And you're going to hear in my story, I'm very upfront, I'm extremely graphic and very descriptive. And I keep my past married to my present because the moment that this alcoholic forgets the pain that brought him through the doors of treatment center number 13, begging to God for one more chance, I'll return. This isn't like hypothesis or educated guesses. This is me telling you that how my story is played out after a 22-year consecutive drug and alcohol run. Minus 1 year, and that was due to incarceration. So it was by force, not by choice, that I withstood my disease. And I'm sorry, but anything, and I mean anything, and you're going to hear this in my story, anything that stands between me and my drink or drug must and will go. And it's not personal, it's just business. Right? Because again, I don't know the disease that you possess that brought you to this chat, but the one that I possess that brought me here, when it says jump, I say, yes, sir. How high? When it says you're going to need to do this in order to get more, I don't have the privilege or the pleasure to say, you know what, I think that's a bad idea and it's not safe for my life. I'm going to sit that out. That's not the disease that I possess. See, looking back, it's so easy for me to understand why I got beat to a bloody pulp every time I stepped in the ring with my opponent, AKA addiction. It was because I simply underestimated the opponent that I was up against every time. Not armed with the facts, underestimating the opponent that I was up against, possessing this delusional alcoholic brain that lies to me in my own voice that makes me believe the unbelievable. I don't stand a chance. And what happened the first time that someone attempted to stand between me and my drug was this. We're on a tour and we're in Chicago, and I'm with a bunch of skaters for PAL, and one of them happened to be a fellow by the name of Mike Vallely, and he catches me with these drugs, and he said, Brandon, get rid of the drugs or get off the tour. And as any good alcoholic does, I listen, I take the drugs, I throw them down the sewer. We finish the demo, go back to the hotel, I meet a woman, she drives me back to the sewer, I fish the drugs out of the sewer. Short story long, I get caught with the drugs. I'm now kicked off the tour. See, my delusional alcoholic brain that I possess lies to me in my own voice, making me believe the unbelievable, tells me, and this is a common theme throughout my life, the skateboarding world needs me. It cannot go on without me. I am an asset. The reality is the skateboarding world does not need me. It goes on quite fine without me, and I'm a liability, but unfortunately, I'm the last person to realize that. Why? Because I possess that job. It consists of knowing everything. So now I'm back home. I have this newfound freedom. Tours are no longer being booked. Flights are no longer being scheduled. Video parts are no longer being produced. Product is no longer being sent to my house. Because in order to achieve such simple feats in life at that point, it requires me to have conversations with words that consist of like honesty, reliable, dependable. And those words do not help me get one more, so I avoid it like the plague. 2 weeks into this, I'm sleeping one morning. My mother busts in the door. She said, Brandon, phone. She throws the phone to me. I grab it. I put the receiver to my ear, and it's Mr. Tony Hawk. And I said, hello. And he said, Brandon, we have one of two options we can do with you. We can put you into treatment. You can save your life. You can continue to skate for Pal Peralta, or you can quit the team. From 7 to 15, I ate it. I breathed it. I slept it. I dreamt it. I became it. My idol, the equivalent to like Santa Claus to a 6-year-old, is on the phone talking to me, and he's giving me an out. He's giving me a hand that says, let us help you continue to grow, prosper, and just thrive in this industry that you've always dreamed of, or you can quit the team. And I don't have a breath of fresh air in my lungs when I said I quit. How did I get there? How did I get here? It's crazy looking back. The disconnection from reality and or abnormality at the ripe young age of 16 is completely insane. And I haven't even stepped into my first treatment center. About 2 months later into this newfound freedom, my mother comes to me one day and she said, Brandon, we have a great idea for you. I said, what's that? She said, we want you to go to treatment. Now, I had thought about it for a moment. And why do you think I would accept that offer from you when I turned it down from my idol, Mr. Tony Hawk? But again, at 17 years old, the abnormal has already become the normal. So disconnected from reality that this alcoholic brain is creating this delusional narrative that allows me to justify and support my untreated alcoholic behaviors. And I can't tell up from down, hot from cold, right from left. And I said, you know what? That's a great idea. I'm going to go to said treatment center and I report back to my mother and my girlfriend why I'm not you nut jobs, nor will I ever be. This is merely an overreaction at best. You just caught me at a bad time on a bad way and a bad day. Tomorrow is going to be different. And I mean it. I mean it. Strap me up to a polygraph. I will pass with flying colors. Tomorrow is going to be different. Unfortunately, I wake up tomorrow to repeat yesterday's actions, and I'm stuck in Groundhog's Day for the better part of 18 years. Nonetheless, I pack my bags. As quick as my mother drops me off, she leaves. I'm met by a very nice woman outside. She said, are you Mr. Novak? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, come with me, sweetheart. She takes me into this cafeteria, and this cafeteria is completely empty, and she leaves, and these big bright interrogation style lights are shining down on me, and I'm like ill as a research monkey, and I'm withdrawing from heroin, and out of nowhere this older black gentleman walks in, and he walks directly up to me. He said, "White boy, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Heroin." He said, "How old are you?" I said, 17. He said, "Do yourself a favor and don't turn 18 in a place like this." And as quick as he came, he left. He nor I had any idea the significance of that simple conversation was ever going to have on my life. Mind you, I came into this program comparing out, proving a point why I wasn't you people. This was just an overreaction at best. Caught me at a bad time on a bad way and a bad day. Focusing only on the differences, not the similarities. You know what I can tell you about that gentleman? Where the 4 teeth were placed in his mouth, because at the time I had all mine. He's black, I'm white. He's 70 to 75, I'm 17. He smokes crack. My delusional alcoholic brain says I successfully do heroin. He's homeless. I live with my mother and my girlfriend. God bless that man. I'm so grateful he found the answer for which he's in search of. And I mean it. You know what I can't tell you about that program? I can't tell you my therapist's name. I can't tell you about that relapse prevention packet they're shoving down my throat, or the healthy and unhealthy boundaries they're trying to instill in me. Because if I could tell you about those things, that means I can relate to being one of you people, and I want no part. I successfully complete that 30-day treatment center. Unfortunately, I built up no defense against the first time that I was going to be tempted upon completion of the treatment. And guess what? I turned 18, and it wasn't in a facility. That old man, what a fool. He had no idea what he was talking about. Here's the hit. I turned 19, 20, 22, 24, 25, 27, 29, 32, 34, 36, 37, 38 in a jail or a treatment center. Every year, I'd sit on whatever bunk of whatever bed of whatever jail I happen to be in, or whatever bed of whatever treatment center I happen to be in, and think back to that older gentleman and say, maybe if me, myself, Brandon Novak, would have listened to him with an open mind and an open heart, I would not continuously find myself in this situation year after year after year after year. Meaning that was fully self-induced. I had now created or painted this picture for what you view me in. But at the time, I'm incapable of seeing the part that I play in this process, because I'm so caught up in the thick and the throes of my addiction that reality is like a far off land that I don't ever venture to. So now I'm between all these birthdays and all these treatment centers. I'm in and out of treatment. I'm in and out of treatment. And I would come in here and I would loiter with the intent to recover, right? I would meet a therapist, and I was convinced that the therapist was madly in love with me, and she wanted to be with me because I was the model client and I was like an amazing looking man. And again, this delusional brain that lied to me, my own voice, that always kept me stuck in the mess. And she'd say, "Okay, Mr. Novak, I'm going to need you to get a sponsor. No problem. I'm going to need you to join a home group. Let's do it. I'm going to need you to acquire a bunch of like-minded individuals such as yourself. They're trying to do the same thing as you, which is to receive another day clean and sober." Bet. You know, the things that she's telling or asking me to do are the things that I thrive in, right? Like, you're talking to a guy that when I showed up for class 20 minutes late, I was not in fear that everyone was staring at me. I was the kind of guy that would show up 20 minutes late, believing that everyone's been waiting for me. So the things that she's asking me to do are like, that's my world. And then she says, "I'm also going to need you to go ahead and experience the 12 steps of AA, NACA. And I said, "You know, I'm beginning to sense a theme of overreaction here." And now for the life of me, I can't understand how it's Christmas Eve. I'm living in a shooting gallery in West Baltimore. All I have on is a short sleeve t-shirt, a pair of jeans, and a pair of boots. I have to put my arms into my shirt over my knees, and my head into my shirt, and I got to breathe through my nose and my mouth because that's the only thing I can do to produce heat to stay warm on this Christmas Eve night that's 39 degrees out. How the fuck did I get here? I had goals, I had dreams, I had aspirations, I had ambitions. First skateboarder endorsed by Gatorade, doing a commercial with Michael Jordan, touring the world with Tony Hawk, designing my pro model. How did I get here? Had done some things in life that people would equate to success, happiness, potentially even dream of doing. The reality of what my life really looks like is I've now been in 8 inpatient treatment centers. I'm beginning to lose count of outpatients and detoxes. My mother has bought me a plot. People are starting to take life insurance policies on me. My mother has sold her first home to pay for me to go to treatment. I've been medevaced to 2 different hospitals in 2 different states for 2 different overdoses. But now I trip and I fall into these TV shows, Viva La Bam, and these movies, Jackass. And just like in the skateboarding world, in this Jackass world, flights are no longer being booked. Shoots are no longer being scheduled because they say if we book him the flight, what condition will he be in when he gets here? Better yet, let's say we book him the flight, and he makes it here. What happens if we have to kick the bathroom door down at Paramount Studios and find him dead on the ground with a needle in his arm? Again, my delusional alcoholic brain that lies to me in my own voice that makes me believe the unbelievable tells me the Jackass world needs me. It cannot go on without me, and I am an asset. In reality, the Jackass world does not need me. It goes on quite fine without me, and I'm a liability. Now, see, 8 inpatient treatment centers in, I've been diagnosed as an addict or an alcoholic, and I agree with that diagnosis. And this is the first time that I'm going to ask for you to be honest with yourself and answer this question honestly. Who in this chat has been diagnosed as an addict or an alcoholic and accepts the diagnosis of being an addict or an alcoholic? So don't get mad at me. I am just the messenger here. But what I'm about to share with you is the truth. There's no need for us to talk about this after the talk. It's an absolute fact. You can Google it when I'm done. If you've been diagnosed, such as I have been, as an addict or an alcoholic, and you accept that diagnosis, all that simply means is we've been diagnosed with a disease that, if left untreated, equals death, fatal disease. 100% fact. But as far as I'm aware of, it's the only fatal disease that I possess that lies to me on a daily basis, telling me I do not have this disease that I've accepted, making me believe the unbelievable. Follow me. Diagnose me with HIV, I'm rushing to the hospital to get medication. I don't want to die, fatal disease. Diagnose me with chemo, I'm rushing to the hospital. Diagnose me with cancer, I'm rushing to the hospital to get chemo. I don't want to die, fatal disease. Diagnose me as an addict or an alcoholic, I need a glass of wine or a bag of heroin to figure out what the hell's wrong with you for diagnosing me with said disease. Just as fatal as the first 2 diseases. But left to my own devices, I'll believe I don't have that disease. I will shut this computer down, and right now, with over 7 years sober, and go to the ATM, pull out an undisclosed amount of cash, and go right around the way and buy a whole bunch of heroin and cocaine. And the scariest thing about that is I can make those idiotic decisions make complete sense to me right now. And if you're sitting there saying, what in the world would allow him to make such a foolish move? It's simple. Brandon only attends Brandon's Anonymous. Brandon only sponsors Brandon, and Brandon is Brandon's God. And when those 3 things are connected, it's not a matter of if, but when I pick back up right where I left off. So now in this Jackass world, my paychecks are being diverted to my second ex-fiance, right? She's my second because clearly they have a pattern of getting between me and my drink and my drug. And as you know, that's not acceptable, and they have to go. And I wish that weren't the case because I love both of them, but my disease takes precedence, and it's not personal, it's just business. Why would I go to treatment center number 9? What would number 9 tell me that number 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1 have missed? So I decide I have a plan, and this plan is going to work. I'm going to move to Helsinki, Finland. It's literally across the world. They don't even speak my language. I'm going to go there. I'm going to regroup. I'm going to rebrand. I'm going to reassess. I'm going to reevaluate. I'm going to redo life because I do not like the results that I'm receiving from my alcoholic life here in Westchester, Pennsylvania, or Baltimore, Maryland. From a very young age, my mother used to tell me, show me who you walk with, I'll tell you who you are. Which then somewhere along the lines transcended into me believing that one of my therapists told me at one of my attempts at one of my treatment centers, social acceptability equals personal recovery. That is not the case. But remember, my brain creates these delusional narratives that allow me to justify or minimize my alcoholic behaviors along the way. So from a very young age, show me who you walk with, I'll tell you who you are, which then I believe transcended into social acceptability equaling personal recovery, meaning that everything is external. How you see me, how you view me has to be how I'm doing. Looking back, all I was doing for so many years was trying to fill this internal void with an external solution. So as long as the account was high enough, the woman was pretty enough, the home was big enough, and the car was new enough, and you told me how great I was doing, I had to be doing amazing. But the reality was I couldn't keep a needle out of my arm to save my life. But I'm going to move to Helsinki, Finland. I jump on a plane from Philadelphia. I fly to Helsinki. I have a car service take me to the Ritz-Carlton of Helsinki because after all, what junkie stays in the Ritz-Carlton, right? Show me who you walk with. I'll tell you who you are. I get to the Ritz-Carlton. I go to the concierge desk. I check in. They take my clothes to my room. I then beeline it directly to the lobby bar. Now, I had just promised the whole world that I was not going to repeat my previous behaviors that continue to allow me to end up in these positions. But I beeline it directly to the lobby bar. I pass all these businessmen in these suits having these meetings in these different languages. And I go to the bar and I order a glass of wine, followed by a second. There's 4 glasses to a bottle. I've now graduated to the bottle. And in doing so, I've met a gentleman at the bar. He slides me a piece of paper. I'm now having black tar heroin delivered to me in abundance. I go to the bathroom, I'm doing what I do, and I couldn't understand how I got in here. And I decided to pick up the phone and call my sponsor. And I said, Lex, how did I get here? And he said, if you have a second, I'd like to share with you something. But I know you're a very busy man with a really full itinerary, and these international calls can become quite pricey. And I said, what, Lex? And he said, I guess you skimmed over the part in the book where we discussed geographical change not equating to recovery. You can't shake your shadow. You take you with you everywhere you go. I put you in Finland, you shoot dope. I put you in London, you shoot dope. I put you in your home in Philadelphia, you shoot dope. It rains, you shoot dope. It snows, you shoot dope. Your baby's born, you shoot dope. Your mother dies, you shoot dope. You people talk about this word trigger. My triggers are when my fucking eyelids open. I can justify any time, place, feeling, or sensation makes sense for me to get high over. Remember, I create these delusional narratives that allow me to support my relapsed behaviors. He said, if you have another second, I'd like to share with you something, but I know you're a busy man with a full itinerary. I said, what, Lex? And he said, do me a favor. I want you to stop what you're doing. I want you to take that needle out of your arm, and I want you to lift your head up and stare into that mirror directly in front of you and tell me what you see. And he said, better yet, you don't say a fucking word. I'm going to tell you what you see. You are staring directly into the eyes of your problem. You are your problem. The drink and the drug is merely the solution to your problem. And for like one of the very rare handful of moments in life, you're allowing someone to stand between you and your solution, AKA your heroin. And you're like a stranger in your own skin at this moment, trying to figure out who let you in and why. You mean to tell me the drugs are not my problem? I've given it everything. I've given it homes. I've given it careers. I've given it sexuality. It asks, I give. I don't have the luxury of not. And I said, you know what, Lex, you're right. These international calls are quite pricey. And I hang up, right? The alcoholic brain, the untreated alcoholic brain, creating these delusional narratives that allow me to believe the unbelievable. Really buying into these calls are expensive. It's time for us to part, Lex. I leave the bathroom, go right back to the concierge desk, have them bring my clothes back to the room that I never even made it to. And I'm headed back to Helsinki airport in hopes to fly back to Philly. Why? Because Finland was the problem. The disconnection from reality and or abnormality is insane. I don't see it yet, though. I'm back in Philadelphia. I'm doing what I do. My mother's a nuclear physicist. My brother's an attorney in the White House. My father died as a direct result of the disease of addiction. First skateboarder endorsed by Gatorade, doing a commercial with Michael Jordan, touring the world with Tony Hawk. Have ended up in these movies that break box office records every time they step foot, and had done some things in life people equate to success, happiness, potentially even dream of doing. The reality of what my life really looks like is I've now been in 11 inpatient treatment centers. I've lost count of outpatients and detoxes. My mother has bought me a plot. People have taken life insurance policies out on me. I'm about to end up on life support for 7 days. My mother has sold 3 homes to pay for me to go to 2 different treatment centers. I've been medevac to 4 different hospitals in 4 different states for 4 different overdoses. My mother's praying to God, please cure him or kill him. I can't take it anymore. How'd I get here? How'd I get here? I got here because I sat there with a closed mind and a closed heart, comparing out, focusing only on the differences, not the similarities, all while possessing this job that consisted of knowing everything, being defiant by nature, hating authority, refusing to conform unless it became my idea. That's how I got here. Why would I go back to treatment center number 12? Why? What's number 12 going to teach me that 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, or 2, or 1 have missed? I have a new plan. I'm not going to waste your or my time. It does not entail me going back to treatment center number 13. It doesn't. I'm going to write a book. Now, reverting back to how I started this talk, saying that none of us get here because we took the short bus to school. Quite the contrary. We get here because we're too smart for our own good. And if you're like me and you're not remaining vigilant of the disease from which you possess, I will outthink myself right out of this seat. But I decided I'm going to write a book. I have no high school diploma. I was not so politely asked to leave the 11th grade as a direct result of my addiction. I'm going to write a book. I write a book, pen to paper. I write 12 chapters. I have a co-author. I give my 12 chapters to him. He turns 12 chapters into 23 chapters. We acquire a literary agent. The literary agent shops my manuscript around. A whole lot of no's, a few yeses. We finally come to an agreement with Kensington Publishers, Citadel Press. I'm now a published author. Not like pay a few bucks and self-publish your book and someone will ghostwrite your story. No, I'm a certified credible. It sounds crazy even saying it. I am a published author who's written now today several autobiography addiction memoirs. You can buy my books in like a Barnes and Noble if you like. But I write a book. The book gets published. I'm an autobiography addiction memoir author. The book does extremely well. It becomes like a New York Times top 10 seller. I'm now receiving hundreds of thousands of pieces of mail from all over the world of people like you saying, Novak, I read your book. I didn't want my story to get as bad as yours. I have 30 days sober. Of people like you, Mom, saying, I read your book. I understand when my daughter picks the bottle over coming to have dinner with me on the weekends. It's not that I'm a bad mom. It's that she suffers with the disease of alcoholism. My delusional alcoholic brain just told me I wrote the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous or the basic text of Narcotics Anonymous. But see, what I forgot to share with you is I wrote that book while drinking copious amounts of red wine and sniffing endless lines of cocaine. The night my book's being released in Times Square in New York City, my manager's there, my publishers are there, all these well-to-do people in the scholarly world are there, and in Times Square in New York City at Barnes & Noble's, and I show up and I don't feel good that day. I don't have any heroin. My buddy is with me from Baltimore and he doesn't feel good either. And all of a sudden they wheel my books in on this dolly to set up a display of my own book release signing of my autobiography addiction memoirs. And I look at my friend and I don't say a word to him, but we have that complete conversation, that language of the heart, untreated, if you will. I stand up, he stands up in uniform precision. I grab 2 boxes of my books. He grabs 2 boxes of my books. We've now just stolen 4 boxes of my own autobiography addiction memoir books for my own book release party in Times Square in New York City at Barnes & Noble's. Run to Penn Station, catch the next train back to Baltimore to sell the books to 2 different stores to get money to buy more heroin. How am I here? How did I get here? I got here because I sat there with a closed mind and a closed heart, comparing out, proving a point where I never belonged, focusing only on the differences, not the similarities, all while possessing this job that consists of knowing everything. That's how I got here. We sell the books, we shoot the dope. He goes his way, I go mine. I get on a train back to Philadelphia, go to my second ex-fiance's home, attempt to put the key in the lock. A common theme of my story is that locks stop working. So I do the next best thing. I kick the door in. I kick the door and I get in the house. The home is completely empty. She had taken our paintings, she had taken her clothes, my clothes, our furniture, our cats. And I'm now lying on the floor in a fetal position, crying uncontrollably. And it dawns on me at that very moment, this big empty shell of a house now consoles this big empty shell of a man lying on the floor, crying uncontrollably. And guess what? The only thing I can think of is that older gentleman from the first treatment center that said, do yourself a favor and don't turn 18 in a place like this. Because yet again, if I just would have listened with an open mind and an open heart, I could have avoided this outcome, which now at this point is becoming completely unacceptable, meaning the pain is finally becoming great enough that I'm willing to open my mind and believe that maybe I no longer know like I thought I knew, and you might be onto something. And at that moment, my phone goes off and my mother, who lives in Baltimore City, called me and she said, Brandon, I'm terrified. Because at the time, the police killed a young black man by the name of Freddie Gray, and Baltimore City turned into the movie The Purge. They were robbing, they were looting, they were shooting, they were stealing. They had brought the National Guard in that stood on every corner or every other corner with a machine gun and a tank, and infused an 8 o'clock curfew. No one was to be on the streets. And my mother called crying uncontrollably, and she said, Brandon, I'm terrified that they're going to burn my house down and kill me in the process. Can you please come make sure I'm safe? My mother's the woman that's the most important person ever. She's did for me what I've never done for myself. She loved me when I didn't love myself. She fed me when I didn't feed myself. She watched me when I didn't watch myself. She showed up for me when I didn't show up for myself. She prayed for me when I didn't pray for myself. And she's begging me to make sure she's safe. And in theory, that's exactly what I'm going to do. In theory. My disease says, that's real cute, bitch. Let me show you what your reality is going to look like. And I jump on the train and I go back to my mother's house, and I walk up to her bedroom and I physically remove that 78-year-old woman from her bedroom. I take her bedroom over. I leave that room once a day for 3 months, only to sneak out to buy more heroin and cocaine. One particular day, my mother now takes to sleeping on the sofa directly next to the front door because she's in fear that I'm going to burn her house down as I chain smoke while shooting heroin, and I tend to fall asleep. And her next best thought is, if I catch her house on fire from upstairs and she's sleeping on the sofa next to the front door downstairs, she can probably make it out alive. What the fuck? One day I'm out getting what I get, and I come back and the lock stops working, so I politely knock on my mother's door. And I'm met by my mother and my brother. And while I was gone that day, my brother walked my mother into her old bedroom. See, my mother was on that notion, ignorance is bliss. And if she didn't go up there to see exactly what I was doing, then it wasn't that bad. My brother walked my mother to her bedroom, and that bedroom looked like a murder scene. There was blood, there was needles, there were bags, there was cookers. If you don't know, thank God. Keep in mind, my story was not my story in the beginning either. So if you're sitting there and you're like, thank God he figured it out, but like, that won't be me. Just remember, my story was not my story either in the beginning. So with that, my brother feels it's best that he makes for certain my mother puts me out, and my mother's crying uncontrollably, and they refuse to let me in the house. And I don't even try to talk my way out of this. I just look at my mother and I said, Mom, do you hate me? She said, no, Brandon, I don't hate you, but I can no longer love you to death. With that, my brother hands me my worldly belongings, everything I own in this world, despite being a successful individual who has done some things that people would equate to success, happiness, potentially even dream of doing. The reality of what my life really looks like is I'm a 38-year-old homeless heroin addict standing on the stoop of my mother's house in Little Italy. Everything I own consists of 8 scarves, 2 jackets, 3 socks, stick of deodorant, fits into a bag that doubles my pillow, a needle, a spoon. And with that, a police officer comes around the corner. He said, are you Mr. Novak? I said, yes, sir. He said, this is for you. I open it up and it's a restraining order. And he said, I promise you, if I catch you on your mother's premises again, I will not be so kind. Leave. I'm walking up the street with no direction in sight. My phone goes off and it's a woman, and she said, I read your book, it saved my life, and I could care less because I don't want mine. She said, what do you say about an all-exclusive paid trip to Fort Lauderdale? I said, that's great. She said, get to the airport, there's a flight waiting for you. I get to the airport and I get in line, and two things I've learned in my career is I will never win an argument with a judge or a TSA airport security agent. What they say goes. And I get up to line, and the woman takes one look at me, and she said, Mr. Novak, are you under the influence of anything? I said, no. She said, I believe you are. You will not fly for 3 days. I was incapable of seeing the blessing that was taking place right before my very eyes. Mind you, I told you, I've now been sober long enough to look back and recognize the synchronicity and life's events that have led me to the here and now that prove to me that God is real. And what happened is, on that day, the God of my understanding dressed up in the form of a TSA airport security agent and did for me what I could not do for myself, which was refuse me access to that flight, because I did not want to get on that flight. But my disease said, I don't really care how you feel, get on the flight. And when I got out of line, I called my sponsor, the one I called in Finland. I said, Lex, I'm stranded at the airport. And he said, you're going to get on a train. You're going to come back to Philadelphia. You're going to stay at our house tonight. We're going to take you to treatment in the morning. Those events take place. I go to treatment, and I walk into the same treatment center I had been to 4 previous attempts out of my 13 overall. And I sit down and I do my intake. And upon my intake, I get up to detox. I detox for 7 days. And for the first time in my life, I successfully completed that 90-day treatment. And things they taught me in that treatment center was, if I changed my perception, I could change my world. And that one day my defects, the very same thing that was killing me, could become my assets. The very same thing that Workit sees fit to reach out to me and say, Brandon, can you share your message of promise, hope, and freedom, in hopes of a form of attraction rather than promotion, so people will believe that if you can do it, so can they. From that 90-day sober treatment center, I went to a sober living house where I resided for 1 year. My mother, the woman who served me a restraining order, the one who bought me a plot, the one who prayed for my death, the one who took life insurance policies out of me, called me 8 months into my process of sobriety. And she said, Brandon, I hate when you come to visit. I said, why? She said, because I get so sad when you leave. 2 months shy of my 2-year sober anniversary, I had been on parole and probation from 18 to 38, never a free day in between. It simply followed me from city to city, to state to state. 2 months shy of my 2-year anniversary, I signed my release papers. I am currently a free man that can go anywhere with anybody, anytime I like. I no longer live in that self-induced prison that consists of a 4-block radius that cost me $10 to get out of, 1 bag of heroin at a time. Decided to get my 2-year medallion abroad. I flew to Paris to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and got my 2-year chip. On my 3rd year anniversary, I bought this home that I get the luxury of talking to you from tonight. On my 4th year anniversary, I went to Amsterdam and got my 4-year medallion from an AA meeting. On my 5th year anniversary, I decided that they told me that in order for me to keep what I have to continue to give it away. And I always promised that when I found myself in a position where I was financially capable, I was going to recreate that sober living house I lived in that did for me what no other place could. On my 5th year anniversary, I opened up Novak's house, 1 male sober living house in Wilmington, Delaware, with 10 beds. Today, I have 4 sober living houses with 40 beds and provide free scholarships for anyone that enters them. May 25th, 2022, I've celebrated 7 years of continuous sobriety. What I've learned in my journey is that the disease of addiction is not a death sentence. Your history does not have to dictate your future, but it can most certainly guide and direct it. As long as you're breathing, it's never too late. I've learned throughout my journey that sobriety has given me today everything drugs and alcohol promised me then. I'm going to close with this story. There's a father that works from home, and this father's swamped in paperwork. And he's watching his child, and his child keeps banging his dad on the knee. Dad, take me out to play. Take me out to play. The father's trying to think of a way to buy 1 or 2 days. And he walks into his office, and in his office on his desk, the father sees a big picture of the puzzle of a world map. And the father thinks to himself, I got it. He completely dismantles the picture of the puzzle of the world map. He throws it on the floor in hundreds of pieces. He said, son, when you put the picture of the puzzle of the world map back together, I'll take you out to play. Father leaves that office, surely thinking he bought 4 days, no questions asked. 2 hours later, that son comes back and he bangs the dad on the knee. Dad, I did it. Dad, I did it. Dad's thinking to himself, impossible. Dad walks back into that office as sure as the day is long, the picture of the puzzle of the world maps put back together. Father, in complete disbelief, said, son, how'd you do it? His son said, Dad, it was so simple. Dad, it was so simple. On the back of the picture of the puzzle of the world map was a picture of a man. I put the man back together. The world fell back in place. Together we stand, divided I die. My name is Brandon Novak. Thank you for your time.
Oh, Brandon, thank you so much. Just incredibly grateful for that story. I've got a few questions for you from the audience. And we're going to kick it off with Gareth, who asks, did you ever get brain fog when you left rehab? I had it for months when I quit painkillers.
Yeah, I never not had brain fog, right? Like I remember doing an interview one time and it happened to do with spring break. And I thought about it in the interview and I said, I've been on spring break for the last 15 years. And I legitimately have been. My day consisted of waking up and ingesting as much drugs or alcohol that I could get my hands on. So when I got sober, to say that I came to in the right state of mind is a far cry from reality. It took me some time, but the reality is today was a little bit better than yesterday, and tomorrow will be better than today. And I just continue to put one foot in front of the other, and it would be impossible for it not to get better as each day passed. That's the hard thing about sobriety. If it was easy, everyone would be sober, and there'd be no fucking need for a Workit link. You know what I mean? Like, so this is where tough times don't last, but tough people do. So Garrett, this is where we suit up and we show up, my friend.
Love that. Danica asks, when your motivation was low, what did you do? How did you stay on track on those dark days?
My motivation didn't even exist for like the first 90 days. I could barely get out of bed. I could barely feed myself. It took everything to brush my teeth. Like me getting up, getting a shower, getting dressed was the equivalent of like trying to climb Mount Everest with no hands or feet or eyes, for that matter, in the first 3 months. But what scared me into sobriety was like, they say you drink, you drug, you'll die. And that's a very real reality today, especially with fentanyl. But I was never scared to die. That was kind of like a welcome defeat, right? Because then the fight's over, the battle's lost. My mother can finally sleep peacefully knowing I'm safe. My impending doom and hell and fear is waking up tomorrow, not dying, having to do things against my will to continuously get high. And I don't even want to do that. That was like what scared me into reality. So if you're weighing the scales of justice, like I'm cool with feeling a bit drab, dark, or down today, as opposed to having it for an eternity. It's all perspective, right? And they told me in treatment, if I changed my perception, I could change my world. So you'll be all right, mama. Like, you'll be all right. You're not the first person that felt this, and you will not be the last. But this is where girls do what they have to do. Girls do what they want to do, and women do what they have to do. And this is where we suit up and we show up. It'll get better, I promise.
Here's a good one coming in from Twitter. What message do you have for younger guys who are using for fun and who think they're in control?
My biggest question is like, why does anyone feel that they need to ingest a drink or a drug to enhance their current state of being? Like, what about you isn't enough that you feel you need to sniff a line of blow or drink a bottle of Jack to alter your state of being? There's a deeper why, and that's what I like to get to. And it's a bit of a generalized, vague answer that I'm giving, and it's more complex because, as you know, it's a case-by-case situation. But the drink or the drug is merely the byproduct of the actual problem, which is the thinking, the attitude, and the behavior. So somewhere within that individual, they're not finding themselves to be enough in whatever the context that is, that they have to like produce this to create a delusional narrative that I'm now the fucking man and I can, like, if that makes sense. So what's the why behind why you want to shoot a bag of dope, sniff a line of coke, hit a joint, swallow a pill.
Absolutely. This one's in from Holly. Hi, Novak. So glad to see you sober and thriving. I recently got sober from alcohol 1 year and 9 months ago, but I'm still struggling with cravings. How did you get through cravings in early sobriety?
The 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm a big 12-step fella. Mind you, when I walked into the 13th treatment center and the 13th AA meeting at the 13th facility, and they said the steps, it was the last place I wanted to be. I had nowhere else to go. No one else wanted me except those weirdos. And go figure, it was the last thing I tried that was the first thing that worked. Because in experiencing the 12 steps, I had a spiritual experience. And the definition of a spiritual experience is simply a psychic change. So I today no longer think how I thought 30, 60, 90 days into treatment, meaning I'm a free man that can go anywhere with anybody. And I'm no longer tempted by a drink or a drug because I do a lot of maintenance and general upkeep to my sobriety that keeps me in sound condition with a somewhat sane mind to respect the opponent that I'm up against. And also I have this heightened sense of awareness. I suffer with a disease called alcoholism, not alcoholism. And I cannot stay sober on yesterday's sobriety. My sobriety has a shelf life of 24 hours. So I do a few simple things along the way each day to maintain my sobriety. And they told me in treatment, if I stuck to the basics, kid, I'll never have to go back to the basics. And I literally live by those basics today. I get up, I make my bed, I get on my knees, and I thank my creator. I have a sponsor, I attend meetings, and I sponsor other fellas. You know, I don't overcomplicate the process, which is what I'm amazing at doing at. I'm really easy to get lost in the accessory of things. I'm an accessories whore, right? So I stick to the basics and I don't overcomplicate it. And the longer I stay sober, the rad thing about it is the less that I know. And the more I know that I'm not in control of anything, it's all of my creator, my higher power. And if I just stay out of my way, stay sober, help another alcoholic, and make a genuinely good decision for the right reason, I have a pretty prosperous life. So the 12 steps is the very long-winded answer to that question.
Absolutely. All right. Just a couple questions, two more for you, Brandon. I know we've already gone over, and I really appreciate your time. Jared asks the question, and it is, my question is, how long did it take to start loving yourself again, and when?
I didn't know how, right? Like I knew I had zero self-esteem. And if I could have figured out how to gain self-esteem again, I would not be in a 12-step fellowship with you people that I thought were very strange and peculiar. But what I did do, and this is all unbeknownst to me, these blessings were taking place unbeknownst to me because I was simply willing to follow the suggestions of people that got here before me that clearly had my best interest at heart. And they knew that I lacked self-esteem. I knew that I lacked self-esteem. But what they said is like, all right, Novak, this is where boys do what they want to do, men do what they have to do, and you're going to join the 2020 club. I said, and the no matter what club. I said, well, what's that? And he said, we don't drink or drug no matter what. What's the 2020 club? At early sobriety, I had a job washing dishes for $6 an hour under the table at a restaurant called Marianne's. They said, you're going to show up 20 minutes early. You're going to take pride in washing those dishes. You're going to stay 20 minutes late. You're going to take the $6 that you make under the table per hour, and you're going to open up your own checking account. You're going to pay your own $165 a week at your sober living house. You're going to buy your own cigarettes. You're going to pay for your own bus token to get to and from work. And I did all those things. And what happened was, through doing those esteemable acts, I gained a sense of self-esteem, unbeknownst to me. So like, overnight, all of a sudden, I'm having a conversation with my boss, and for the first time in my life, I'm like able to look at him in his eyes, and I'm telling him with conviction how I feel, and I'm not worried about what his take from my story is. And as is sobriety, man, if you just stay part of this course, all these blessings are going to take place that you're not even really understanding that are happening. So that's how my self-esteem reappeared. was by me doing esteemable acts. And after all, alcoholism and addiction is simply a problem with your thinking, your attitude, and your behaviors. So my behavior started to change, right? Because if we could outthink ourselves out of addiction, we'd fucking do it. But it literally defies logic to use the same brain that thought us into that position to think us out. So at the end, I couldn't think myself out, but I could follow your suggestions. So I brought the body, and in bringing the body, my behavior started to change, which then my mind followed. It's amazing. I love it. So you might think that I'm just like a really weird guy right now and getting all in depth with this, but it makes sense. Just trust and believe in the process, my friend.
All right. And Brandon, I wanted to end on this question, partly because a lot of us know you through skateboarding and your skateboarding career. And a lot of us feel like we kind of grew up with you in that way. And I think that is part of why your story is so resonant. And also because I find that my sobriety is easier when I find the joys in life, especially the joys that I loved when I was younger, and letting myself have them as a sober adult. And so the question is, do you still enjoy skateboarding now that you're sober?
Yeah, it's it's funny. I realized about 2 years ago that skateboarding is like the most amazing thing on the earth and does for me what I've been trying to find a solution to my whole life, which was shut this brain off. And I learned that while I was struggling trying to film this trick. I sprained my ankle in the process. I was so angry. I was throwing my board. I was breaking it. And it was at that very moment I said, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to, and why I love it so much. Because although I didn't make the trick, I sprained my ankle. When I was throwing my board, I was in the moment. I wasn't thinking about yesterday. I wasn't thinking about this new business deal, this new person, this new place or thing. I was in the moment, and I couldn't put a price tag on shutting this crazy brain of mine off. So I've returned back to it. And to give you a perspective of where I'm at today at 45 years old, I'm about to release a brand new video part that I just filmed in Barcelona, Spain, paired with my first pro model, because right when my initial pro was about to come out, I chose heroin over skateboarding. And full circle, I'm now releasing this video part paired with my first pro model board. And this video part today stands with the other parts that are being released. And I'll let the skating talk for me, but it's the best video part I've ever put out.
Well, I'm so excited we got a sneak peek of that, and y'all check that out when it comes out.
Yeah.
On behalf of everyone here at Workit Health, we want to thank you for coming out tonight and being with us to witness Brandon's incredible journey. Brandon, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I just want to let you know that we still have 2 Brandon giveaways on our Instagram and our Facebook to win Brandon's books and t-shirts. So get in on that if you can. And while you're at it, follow us on socials at Workit Health, and follow Brandon too at Brandon_Novak.
Double
and a big double underscore. That's right. You get 2. And a big thank you to our sponsors tonight, Red Alert, Iceland Iceman, and Lighthouse Skate Park. Y'all have a wonderful night. Thank you so much, Brandon.
God bless. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
I was actually waiting to happen.